Ndizibulisele kuni baphulaphuli namhlanje kusasa ngecawa ndibulele imbeko inhlonipho yokuba nina exakeni kwenu nifumane ithuba lokuba nibe kunye nam ngaliyure. Namhlanje ukusukela into yokuba ngolosithathu kwabo ke bandimamelayo ngolosithathu kwi-Bible study ndenze incwadi kaYoshua isahluko sesixhenxe ukanti ke nesahluko sesibini ekuthi ke phakathi kwazo ke kubekho chapter 3 to 5 and or sandwiched in between these two chapters. Chapter 2 thetha ngoRahab, negama ngoRahab, neprofession yakhe uprostitute. Kwexali ngapha u7 uAkhan, he's a Jew, specifically he's the house of Judah. Then we contrasted that with John chapter 3 with Nicodemus unegama, he's a Pharisee, ngqonyela kwezomthetho, very religious, akamfazi. Then on the other side you get chapter 4, a Samaritan woman, she has no name, notorious, he's not religious. We contrasted that. Now, there were a lot of good response I got, and there were certain questions people were asking. And I'd like to follow, not that sermon, no please, but what I want to do is, as a matter of a principle, there is principles that guide Bible interpretation, the homiletics. Any principles as means avoida laa nto yokuba hayi ke kum ke ndiyibona ngolo hlobo itsho ke kum irayithi for mna. Loo nto ayinawusisa ndawo ngoba ingulowo umntu uzawuthetha loo nto afuna uyithetha athi irayithi for yena. Ndifuna apha kule testamente intsha, kule gospel kaMarko, ndibonise iprinciple apho ufumanisa into yokuba kuba kwii-episodes ezilandelelanayo, mathile ngesixhosa, kubakho amabali angenanto kwenza nelinye alandelelana namabali. Kuyanyanzeleka ke sifumane iprinciple uba kutheni la mabali elandelisene ngolu hlobo. Ndiza kwenza umzekelo ngale ntshumayelo yanamhlanje. Here in the Gospel of St. Mark, it is in chapter 8. And next week I'll come back again. I'll come to the Gospel of St. Mark, corner, chapter 4, 5. There are certain things that we need to understand. So chapter 4, so chapter 8 again, namhlanje. Uqala pha verse 22. Siphele 26. Phambi kokuba ke siyenze loo nto, masithandaze. Bawo umoya oyingcwele siyawudinga xa kufikela umzuzu wokuba kufundwe ilizwi ngoba ilizwi eli labhalwa ngamadoda ayaweqhutywa ngumoya oyingcwele. Abo bantu babeqhutywa ngumoya oyingcwele, oRute, oEsther, oMoses, oPaul, abo bantu babeqhutywa ngumoya oyingcwele. Xa ke labhalwa ngolo hlobo, kwawudingeka kwaloo moya oyingcwele oyakwazi ukuthi ayityhile ingqiqo kaThixo. Ngoko ke siyazithoba phambi kwakho, sebenza umsebenzi wakho umoya oyingcwele empilweni yethu. Vula ingqiqo yethu egameni lenkosi uYesu Kristu. Amen. Apha ke kuMarko, here in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8, you will notice this. There is a connection between the preceding episode, which is 14 to 21. We are looking at 22 to 26. But there is a preceding one, 14, 21. And then kubeko the following, lena sifundayo, 27 to 30. Now, the episodes Asia, kamabali amafutshane, ebukhangeleka ingathi akananto kwenza namaye. Now, when you read the episodes of that nature, this law of observation becomes of critical importance. I said on Wednesday, sometime here in December last year, I went to New Brighton and I came at Sicelo Street, and I find a place that was excluded. It was fenced. Nobody was allowed to come in, and the cars were directed to another direction. And the people said to me when I asked, this is a sin, this is a crime scene. Somebody was shot and he died. He was covered there, and there were pictures that were taken. They were measuring distances. There were video and cameras. And these people were busy, the police. They left no stone unturned. They look at every detail, and they're looking at connections. It same applies when it comes in the reading of the Bible. We need to treat this as a kind of a crime scene, whereby you isolate it, you observe, you pay attention. Nothing is not important. Look at the specifics. Look at the connections. Ask questions. This is very, very important. And you've got to be keeping looking and deep digging, and keep reading and keep looking. And whatever you do, don't stop after one short glance at the text. Immerse yourself in the search for connections, because these are very, very, very critical. There are a lot of things that we need to be looking for. Look for words, meaning of words, the cause and effect relationships, general to specific. It's very, very important. Conditional clauses, consequential effects, and other features in the scripture. That's why it takes so long before one can be in a position to say he is ready to deliver a message. Masikhawuleze ke sikhangele lo chapter 8 lo verse 22 to 26. They came to Bethsaida. Bethsaida, it's another town which was popular for fishing. And some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. Verse 23, he took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. Now listen to this. They begged Jesus to touch the blind man. And Jesus did touch him. He took him by his hand and led him out of the village. I think that you need to underline. When he had spit on the man's eye and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, "Do you see anything?" Buza uYesu, vele emthicele emehlweni, wambeka izandla, wabuza kuye, ingabe ikhona into oyibonayo, bona ntoni? Verse 24, he looked up and said, "I see people. They look like trees walking around." Verse 25. Once more Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened, his sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. 26. Jesus sent him home, saying, "Don't even go into the village." Now, xa ujonga elibali by itself, taken by itself, this is a very strange passage. Funny kakhulu. Why does Jesus only heal the man partially at first? Kutheni uYesu emphilisa lo muntu half, partially, angamphilisi ngokupheleleyo kuqala? Ingaba uYesu was unable to heal the person completely at once? Wengenako ukumphilisa bekanye ngelo xesha? Why does Jesus ask the man if he can see anything? Kutheni uYesu embuza uba lo mfo ikhona na into ayibonayo? Ingabe uYesu akazi? Does he know? Does not know? Is he uncertain about his healing ability? Ingabe uYesu wayekuthandabuza ukuphilisa kwakhe? Very, very important for us to ask those questions. 10 uYesu enjena nje. At first, the man can see nothing. Xa eziswa lo muntu akho nto ayibonayo. And then uYesu enze laa nto wayenzayo kuye, amtshicele, ambeke isandla. Then he can see partially, abe nakubona kancinci kodwa angaboni clearly. Finally, Jesus enables him to see clearly. Okugqibela uYesu aphinda ambambe amchukumise abone kakuhle. Is there a point to this? Ikhona na into eyimfundiso kulento? Let us look at the surrounding episodes. Kunyanzeleke ngoba ke usikhangele amanye amabali la angqonge elibali. And look for some connections. Khona izinto na apha esihlangana yona. Perhaps the connections will help us understand this puzzling passage. Sawuba uncedakala kwesahluko ukhangeleka siyingxaki. Xa sinyukela ngasentla and look at the preceding episode. That is the episode before the one that we are reading, which starts from verse 14 to 21, which reads as follows. The disciples had forgotten to bring bread, except for one loaf they had with them in the boat. Abafundi bahamba noYesu balibele ukuza nesonga. Kwakukho isonga esi-1 esisebhotini. Verse 15 uthi, be careful, Jesus warned them. But Yesu lumkani, uJesu, watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. Lilumkeleni igwele labaFarisi ukanti noHerode. Verse 16, they discussed this with one another and said, it is because we have no bread. Inoba yilento basingena songa ngoba uYesu uthetha ngegwele. uYesu eyazi into abayixoxayo, verse 17, aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, uYesu ababuze, what are you talking about having no bread? uYesu intoni enthetha ngayo yokungabi nasonga? Now, you need to underline this line. Do you still not see, underline see, or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes, underline that, but fail to see, underline that, and ears but fail to hear, underline that? Don't you remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many baskets full of pieces did you pick up? Bakhumbuza uYesu umangaliso owenzayo xa bekhathazwa kuba nesonka esinye sevela kudlisa izihlwele ngezonkana ezibini. Baza abafundi baphendula. 12 replied, and when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many baskets full of pieces did you pick up? Phinda wabuza uYesu, ngoku bendiyondle i-4,000 ngezonka iilofu eziyi-7, kwasala izonka ezingakanani? Baphendula abafundi bathi 7. Kwasala izonka ezi-7. He said to them, do you still not understand? Ingabana ngoku anika understand. nifrustrate ukuba ninesoko esi-1 silapha sika 13 ndivela udlisa i-4,000 ngezonka ezi-7 sendivela udlisa i-5,000 ngezonka ezi-2 siyeke ke le sikhangele i-episode elandelayo episode elandelayo ku-27 8:27 to 30 Jesus and his disciples went on to the village around Caesarea Philippi. On their way, he asked them, "Who do people say I am?" uYesu wama nabafundi bakhe eCaesarea kaFilippi, waze uYesu wabuza kubo bathi abantu abandingubani. 28 they replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." Banye bathi ngomnye wabaprofeti. 29 "But what about you?" Ubuza uYesu, "Ke nina nithini?" Wababuza, he asked, "Who do you say I am?" Nithi ningubani? Peter answered, "You are the Messiah." Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. No, we underline that. Now, sifunde i-episode ezingaphi? Ezintathu. Siqale ukufunda kwethu ku-chapter 8 ku-22 sayophela ku-26. Sasuka sayofunda i-episode ephambi kwaleyo u-8:14 to 21. Sagqibela ngalesigqiba ngayo ukufunda ngoku. Lena isukela ke yona ke u-27 up to 30. Ezi episodes ziyalandelelana. Yintoni injongo yethu apha? Sibhizi nala episode ka-22 yalamfama ibiziswe kuYesu, wazi uYesu wayiphilisa partially, akayiphilisa ngokupheleleyo ngexesha elinye. Masikhangeleke into yokuqala apha ebalulekileyo. Number 1, all 3 episodes are basically dialogue. Zontathu ezi episode ziyi-dialogue. uYesu uthetha nabafundi bakhe. Second point, in all 3 episodes, Jesus asked a question. uYesu ubuza umbuzo. uYesu uyabuza. uYesu obuza umbuzo. Third point, in the first episode, kula episode yokuqala la ka-14 to 21, Jesus' dialogue is with his disciples. uYesu uthetha kunye nabafundi bakhe. uYesu one-dialogue nabafundi bakhe. Kodwa xa ukhangela u-27 to 30 in the third episode, kwakhona isenguYesu onengxoxo nabafundi bakhe, une-dialogue nabafundi bakhe. Now you are left with the middle one, 22 to 26, which is different because uYesu une dialogue with a blind man. Siphinda kwabona eyokuqala u14 8:14 uYesu une dialogue nabafundi bakhe. Leyo yokugqibela u27 uYesu une dialogue nabafundi bakhe. Between these two dialogues eziphakathi kukaYesu nabafundi bakhe kukwi-episode apho uYesu ane dialogue not nabafundi kodwa with a blind man. It's very, very important for us. Siyibambe la nto. Ingaba, is there a suggested comparison or contrast or connection between these three episodes? 4. The middle episode, 22 to 26, mentions the village twice. Khangela u8:23 no 8:26. Uthi u23. Uthi u23. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. 23 lo. U26. Uthi u26 yena. Jesus sent him home saying, don't even go into the village. He mentions the village twice. In that episode, funda 27, 8:27. Uyawunotice into yokuba Jesus and his disciples went on to the village around Caesarea Philippi. On the way, he asked them, who do people say I am? He went on to the village. So, if village is mentioned in verse 27. 5th point, very important. Jesus ends the blind man episode, 22 to 26, by forbidding him to go back into the village. uYesu xa eyivala le episode uyayala la mfama ukuba ingabuyeli kula village. Uvala ngalo mazwi okumyala into yokuba ungabuyeli phaya. Don't even go into the village. Juyesu. Amelade. By forbidding him to go back into the village, Jesus ends the 3rd episode. Xa uYesu evala i-3rd episode, which is 27 to 30, by forbidding the disciples to tell anyone about him. uYesu, he warned them not to tell anyone about him. That's it. Again, he's avoiding the village. Don't tell anyone. Okay? Now, I want you to listen to this. 6th point. The middle episode, 22 to 26, revolves around terms related to seeing. Xa ufunda 22 to 26 uzawuva intetho kaYesu ejikeleza apha ekuboneni. Kufuneka uobserve the repetition. Umzekelo 8:22 masikhangele ke u22 uthi they brought a blind man, ndoda imfama. Verse 23, he took the blind man. Verse 23, verse 23, wakona, he spit on the blind man's eyes. Wathi cela amehlo ale ndoda ingaboniyo imfama. Verse 23, do you see anything? Verse 24, he looked up, wajonga phezulu. Verse 24, I see people, bona bantu, they look like trees, khangeleka ngathi imithi ehambayo. Jesus put his hands on the man's eye. Verse 25. Verse 25 akona, his eyes were open. Verse 25 akona, he saw everything clearly. Mamela, take 22, 23, 23, 23, 24, 24, 24, 25, 25, 25, 25. In terms as ezisetyenziswayo zinento kwenza nokubona. Tell you into, he saw everything, his sight was restored, his eyes were open. People look like trees. I see people. He looked up. Do you see anything? He spit on blind men's eyes. Jalo. Now listen to this now. In the light of the preponderance of terms, ekunyanyathweni nokuphindaphindwa kula magama anento kwenza nokubona, in seeing, in the blind man's episode, it is interesting, kuyamangalisa, to note similar terms used in reference to the disciples in the first or preceding episode. Kuyamangaliswa ufumanise into yokuba kusetyenziswa amagama afanana namagama kweli bali liphambi kweli bali. Verse 14. Masikhangele phaya ku-8, khangele uverse 17. Ukhangele umgca wesithathu. Mangiqale phe ekuqaleni kodwa uzoyiva kakuhle. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see? 17 lo. Khangele verse 18. Do you have eyes but fail to see? That's 18. This repetition of seeing in the first 2 episodes is undoubtedly an important connection between the two. Lamagama asetyenziswayo manye okubona engumxholo ibe apha ekuboneni nasemehlweni. yenza lamabali mabini ngoku ekhangeleka ingathi elinye ibala linazokwenza elinye ibali. Lamabali ikhona into wadibanisayo. Note, ndifuna uqaphele, that seeing in the blind man's episode masiphinde kwakhona. Qaphela ukubona kwale ndoda iyimfama, which is the episode chapter 8 verse 22. Qala pha 22. Is being used literally, referring to literary vision. Apha akwenziwa parable le ndoda ayiboni nyani, swi spiritualize akaboni literally akaboni, and into okuncedwa kwakhe nguYesu wavuleka amehlo wabona. It's literal. Now, mamela ke. That in the first episode, 14, however, seeing is used figuratively. Yolondo umva referisha to understanding. Verse 17, now 8:17, umva pa uYesu esithi, do you not see or understand? Which means la see amsebenzisayo baya ufigurative. Asikokubona ukubona ngeliso, kukubona ngengqondo, but he's using that term. Mamela. Jesus repeats these nuances as he ends the episode with a repeated question. Uyayiphinda uYesu lana ku 8:21 athi uYesu, do you still not understand? Which would mean, do you still not see? Mamela ke mntu kaThixo. Impendulo kaPetros, that's the last episode, in 8:29, you are the Messiah, Messiah, indicates that Peter now understands who Jesus is, even though others may not. In essence, he now sees clearly who Jesus is. Now, mamela yo. Diyenza lento. Because wena ngifuna wena ubuyele kwesisahluko, ufune isisahluko. Because la uza kunceda kwezinye, because iBhayibheli igcwele ilanto. Igcwele ilanto iBhayibheli. Ndifuna ke ukunimamela kakuhle. My conclusion about this connectivity, this connection. In the first episode, first episode, 8, verse 14 to 21. Jesus asked his disciples some questions and realized that they do not really understand who he is. uYesu babuza imibuzo abafundi bakhe, aqaphele into yokuba they don't see who he is. That's figurative. They don't understand who he is. If we first episode, Yolando, they see Jesus partially. Nyano hlukile kwabanye abantu. Akafana abaprofeti, akafana abafarasi, but they don't see who he is. They don't understand who he is. By the third episode, as if you get up that third episode, 27. As if you get up that third episode, an illustration of the process that the disciples are experiencing. It is not so much a story about Jesus healing as it is about man seeing. The emphasis of the second episode is not about Jesus healing more than it is about man seeing. He only sees partially at first. As do the disciples. They see Jesus partially, but they don't fully understand him. Bamlandela because what different from kwabanye abantu, but who he really is, they don't see, they don't understand. Then he sees clearly. For a clash. As do the disciples. Oh, Messiah. So the blind man episode, I want you to listen to that. The blind man episode, which means 22. The blind man episode, 22, is really an interpretation in the flow of a section about the disciples' understanding of Jesus. Lemfama kungayo apa umqimbi awukho ngemfama nangona ungemfama, and if physical, irreal, sweet spiritualizer. But le experiment uYesu ayenzayo is physical and tangible. He is busy with the story of the disciples, their spiritual growth in terms of seeing Jesus and not looking at Jesus, seeing Jesus and not see Jesus. Hence that necessity, you've got eyes but you don't see. Abafundi bakunye no Yesu, they see but they don't see. They don't understand who he is. And what Jesus does, a situation is created of a blind man, literally blind. Amen. Hence, ufumanisa into yokuba blind man bracketed inclusio enveloped between the first episode 14 to 21 kunye ne last episode lena ka 27 to 30. Eva the episode 14-21 kube khona ukugedela 27 to 30. Between these two there is a blind man episode which is sandwiched between these two, and the issue as such because kaloku ndithe kuwe i-dialogue kaYesu kwi-first episode is a dialogue of Jesus with the disciples, and the last one is a dialogue of Jesus with the disciples. You are left only with one episode, which is 22, which is the dialogue of Jesus with the blind man. Kungona ke ngoku masilifumane ilizwi. Ixesha eli, what I'm trying to do with you is to take you to the crime scene and use the law of observation, and we look for every connection and every detail. We ask questions repeatedly until we have internalized the story, the episode, that we are part of the episode. We ask connection, we look at repetition, we look at phrases that are overly used. So shumayela ungayenzi loo nto. Sungama. Mamela. Now we see here. We see the blind man. He sees clearly now. He says, "Oh, I see clearly. It's clear." We see the disciples. "No, you are Messiah." You are the Messiah. You are the Messiah. Maybe you are a nice person, very nice. Maybe you are a very good teacher. You are the Messiah. Now, it is a way that provides a colorful, real-life illustration of what was occurring in the lives of the disciples. UYesu uthatha le mfama as an illustration, and he interprets what was going on really in the lives of the disciples. You see, indaba yokusindiswa, indaba yokusindiswa, yokukholwa, it's not an event, it's a process, and it's dynamic, and it's progressive. Jesus is bigger. He is God. We cannot fully comprehend him because we will be God if we can understand God. But enough is revealed for us to believe, but our belief hasn't got the full focus of who God is. And ukukholwa and discipleship is a process of ezixesha lihamba amehlo am engqi aye embona who God is, and the more I see who God is, the more I see how sinful I am, and the more I am getting better as I reflect on him. As a result, progressively growing into holiness, hagios, the hagios. When I speak of hagios, at this stage I am not talking about because the word holiness has two meanings. It has a meaning of the doing, holy living, but there is the hagios, the state of being different, the state of setting above. Abakathethi ngento ozenzayo nongazenziyo, bathetha nje umntana wahlukile, unendlela ayiyo. He has been set. Unestandard anaso. Then ukwenza uzalwa ile-level abekwe kuyo kumenzima ukwenza izinto zaphansi. Uyeva umleni wami kusho athi nqinelani izinto zaphezulu ngokuba nihleliswe naye incwadi ama-Efes sisema nahlaliswa naye kwesamazulwini indawo this state of hagios. Mamela kona ndiyayazi no awuduze inhloko yami yenza buhlungu. Ibimele njalo sikhangele kuMarko chapter 8 saqala ukufunda ku-22 to 26 i-episode yokuqala leyo. Sathi ke into yasinceda into yokuba ngoba le episode inento eninzi singayiqondiyo nale uYesu ba aphilise partially. uYesu simazi uba uYesu umphilisa umuntu completely. Okwesibini nalento ngoku lo muntu bona imithi ngathi ahamba emva kwexesha aphinde abantu aphinde abone clearly. Uyafana ngayo nalento uba lo muntu wathathwa wakhutshelwa ngaphandle kwi-village. Yabo wakhutshelwa ngaphandle kule ndawo ahlala kuyo. Yonke lento bekuthiwa amzisa kuYesu uba uYesu amtatshe. uYesu wambamba wamtatsha. But that touch, not the touch of healing, itouch yokumkhupha apha kule village, aphume kule village. Yo into aphume apha evillage. Hey, aphume. Yana ndiyibawela ke leyo. Ndibawela ngoku ivela ngoku laa nto yophuma. Because sometimes abanye abantu bayatatshwa angaphumi kulaa system. Njengathi South Africa sifumanise into yokuba sakhululwa ne-1994 savota sathini samatsha senza yonke into. 26 years later fumanise uba no zange siphume. 26 years later khange siphume, get out of that system. I-system yondele kuthi, this system of corruption yokubola to the core, as it's inculcated into our subconscious mind at the core of us. Afuna ushumayela afuna ushumayela khutshelwa ngaphandle khutshwe nawe Abraham bathi ndikubiza uphume ebantwini bakho ndiphinde ukuthume kubo. Kunzima ukuthunywa ebantwini unabo, yabona ucorrupt uphinde nawo kufuneka uphume kubo uphume. Uphume. That's why it's to chase ecclesia called out in order to be sent back. But funeka uphume uphume. Ngokuloo nto ke mamela ke ngoku 22 to 26 lo ulapha ke ngoku. Then bekhona preceding ke ngoku le preceding i-dialogue apha kulo 22 i-dialogue nguye nemfama. But ku-14 li-preceda leya i-dialogue kunye nabafundi. And ufumanise uba phaya kukho amagama apha asetyenziswayo phaya kulaa first episode anento kwenza nobona. Anento kwenza kunye nokubona. uYesu ufuna uqonda uba verse 18, do you have eyes but fail to see and ears fail to hear? You see? uYesu abafundi banamehlo but ababoni. Bambona uYesu but abamboni. Ati, don't you understand? Verse 21, he said to them, do you still not understand? You know? So le nto umfama isuka phaa kula 22 isukela phaya kula la dialogue ebenayo kunye nabafundi bakhe. Iphinde ke ngokuyotsho pha 27, who do the people say I am? Who do you say I am? Nina nithi ndingubani? Nina. So into kwenza kwakhona of how they see Jesus, and le dialogue yokuba bambona njani na noba abamboni ibrakethwe i-illustration real. Isimshumayele the importance of illustrations in your sermon. Manukuyeke sathwana kule veki zayo ndiza kwenza same thing incwadi kaMarko. I'm going to take episodes and use this episode as a crime scene and ask questions, and we get deep into that. God bless you. Sibakusikelele. Bawo. Sincede Thixo. Sinika umonde. Angxamele ukushumayela Thixo. Kaphezulu ndoba singxamele ukushunyayezwa uwe. So that when we read this word, we pass the stage of reading the word until the word reads us. Sikelela abantu bakho bathamsanqele. Banike iveki enoxolo. Sana sakho masiphezu kwabo. Basikele ubagcina balondoloze.